You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk Sunday streaming practices. How is everybody doing today after quite a day of football yesterday? Another long day coming up today. We welcome everybody on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're broadcasting live on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network and also simulcasting on Let's Talk Sports. And you'll catch us throughout the week in replays and whatnot. We welcome everybody in this morning. I just got off a lively session, another lively half hour with Mac and Jack and Robert Butler. Don't take offense with that. I got to leave whenever you pop in the room. It's great to have you all with us today. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. Good morning, Drew. Good to have you with us. Bright and early this morning. We're going to talk mostly the NFL and Major League Baseball today. Good morning, CA. Good to have you. I tried to get them to call you CA over there so it's easier for them, but they aren't really picking up on CA. So we'll talk yesterday's games, obviously. Kansas City, I think a workmanlike win. I had 2 losses yesterday in my wagers because I bet Kansas City -9, got a backdoor cover at the end. I knew it was going to happen. I could see it come. I was sitting there talking to my wife. I'm like, I'm going to lose this game because they're going to kick a field goal because they need 2 scores. Anyway, that's what happened. But you know what? Patrick Mahomes with a good performance, injured. Jacksonville, nothing to be ashamed of. CA, you were right, by the way. I was looking back at the game cast. They were down 3 with 11 minutes left. My bad. I still would have kicked off there. And you're right. That they have nothing to be ashamed about there. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Giants just being demolished. But Giant fans, you shouldn't be that disappointed. Again, perspective is everything. I will get into that in a minute, too. Drew, I'll get to your comment. I have that. We're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to talking some baseball. We'll talk today's games against all logic. I also like the Bengals today, even down 3 offensive linemen. And then, of course, the 49ers and Cowboys. We'll talk some coaching news, whatever else we have to talk about. Major League Baseball we'll get into. I'm going to talk about Sal Bando when we get into baseball for sure. Very underrated player. Not a Hall of Famer by any means, but this is a guy who finished in the top 5 in the MVP voting 4 times. Great player with the and 3-time world champion, consecutive years with the Oakland A's back in the 70s. Great player, guy. Always tried to get in to interview and didn't get the opportunity. We'll talk Sal Bando. We'll talk the big trade. I think a big trade, the American League batting champion for a really good young pitcher in Minnesota and Miami. We'll talk about that. We'll talk the Hall of Fame ballot and what our thoughts are there. Listen, you don't have to elect somebody every year, by the way. I saw a ballot one of these voters put out this week, and I'm like, how do you put 10 names on this ballot? We'll get into that. Maybe we'll talk about some of the team outlooks as we head into spring training. And then some other, we'll see. We're going to start focusing probably more. And maybe Kenny Gifford, who I don't know is with us yet, asked me to look for some weird sports, and I found one. We'll talk a little bit about that. That'll be our surprise at some point during the course of the day, and maybe a little college football. Ed Reed coaches Bethune-Cookman for about 25 days. Good morning, Anthony Price. Great to have you with us today. Rick Sherlock, good morning. Rick, you can't get your question answered over there by Jim Jeffcoat. I think I had to answer it again today. I'll answer it again today about Lamar Jackson. Oh, God. Maybe in the 10 o'clock hour, I should tell Jim to come on just to get that question answered for you. Maybe you're monitoring both your shows. Maybe they'll answer it eventually. You think the Giants are going to sign Jones and Barkley back? The Mad New Yorker's not here yet. He'll sell no because he thinks both coordinators are going to get head coaching jobs, which, by the way, they are not. Kafka will get Well, I think Kafka's got a great chance to be a head coach in the NFL at some point. It's not going to be this year, this coming year, next year, whatever. Wink Martindale is not getting a head coaching job. He's a really good defensive coordinator. He wasn't good yesterday, and neither was his defense. But they should keep, and he thinks they should get rid of Barkley and Jones. So, you've spent all this time finally getting the right coaching staff in place, the right management team in place. You got a quarterback who played really great football this year. Sorry, he's probably the 7th best quarterback in football right now. I'll go through the list if we have to today. But, yes, you have to bring these guys back. Do you want to start all over? They're the only 2 guys any good on the offense. You sign them and you bring in some pieces to help Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was awful last night. I'm not going to make excuses for him. But at the end of the day, I saw some work put up. At the end of the day, you're going to take a big step backward. You let those 2 guys go. Because what quarterback can you bring in that's any better? We'll talk all of that. Tackle basketball, it is not. I did find, Rick, we'll get it. We'll focus on some tackle basketball. I found it, but it didn't look like a league. It looked like something some guys just threw together. It's really kind of weird, but we'll look at that too. But the one I found is a bit disturbing, as well as, it's like, what the F are you guys doing? Birds covered, so I'm pulling for the trigger, eating 3.5 digging for gold tonight. You're talking about, you're 49ers. I will tell you up front, I'm on the Bengals today, plus I believe 4. I will see what that line is today, and the 49ers as well. Tough day yesterday. I had the Giants plus 7.5, and that was just stupid. I probably made the bet trying to justify my comments about Daniel Jones and the Jacksonville loss. That's what happens in gambling, by the way, because it should have been a win. Saw it coming with 5 minutes left. That backdoor cover you get killed on. It's only happened to me about 1,000 times in my life. He did agree with you. You know what? It's funny. He did, but he didn't. It's very weird, right? He started to say, Rick, and for you guys who don't know, Rick had asked Jim Jeffcoat about Leslie Frazier and the interest in him as a head coach. We'll look at some of the guys that are interviewing in different places this morning. He started to say he should get a job, but then he kind of backed off and said some guys are better coordinators. I think that's the case. I agree with you. I think Leslie Frazier is a great defensive coordinator, and that's probably where he should stay. Mixed metaphor. It is interesting, Drew. We talked about this. We were in the. Well, I don't know if you, because there's so much that goes on in that group chat. I think you're still in there, but I think you might have muted it, which probably is a good idea, because it's gotten away from a little bit what I expected. And Alan, I love Alan. Alan's filling us with lots of happenings around the world of sports, which is fine. Some of it, most of it, I know already, but. Alan's a great guy and he's trying to help out. But we had an interesting conversation Friday morning before I started my show at 8:00 about Kenny wants to see some odder sports, or I said otter. I don't even think otter is a word, but more odd, whatever. Off the beaten track, if you will. And I talked about doing a retro. I may do some standalone shows and show some old Wide World of Sports shows and kind of do commentary along with them or something. I might do something along. Maybe I'll get somebody to do it with me. Maybe I'll get Kenny to do it with me. That'd be awesome. I mean that in the nicest way possible, Kenny. So we'll see. So that's how this came up, True. Otters. Yes, otters have their own sports. From Perth, man. Sometimes the D's sound like T's. Sometimes the T's sound like D's. Whatever. Let's see how I say the kid's name from Minnesota here today. Anyway, let's jump into the games here. And by the way, I did say rest in peace to Sal Bando, which we're going to talk about a bit once we get through some football. I wasn't a Yankee fan, but you got to love Sal Bando. He's a classy, gritty ball player. Chris Ford, I don't know if we mentioned it on this show. I did mention it on my Wednesday show. Chris Ford, former really good college basketball player at Villanova, got them to the Final Four in 71. I think it was 71. And then a pretty good player with the Pistons and the Celtics. And he coached the Celtics for a while. And he also won 2 championships as a player with the Celtics. He passed away here this week. And also, kind of on our wide world of sports kicking, different sports, Robbie Knievel, I think only 60, passed away this week. And Robbie picked up in his, I'm going to do something with this, whether it's a vlog or whatever. He picked up on his father's mantle and carried on the family business in jumping everything in sight, cars, trucks, the Grand Canyon. He actually jumped. I was actually going to show that video today because he actually did jump it. Unlike his father, he actually jumped it on not the place where Snake River, where I don't think Evil could have got to the Grand Canyon. I think he couldn't get the permit. So he's at like Snake River, which I guess is the Grand Canyon, but he was in a rocket. It was really a bad publicity stunt, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, definitely, to follow Evel Knievel when I was a kid. And then Robbie picked it up, and I would follow him when he was certainly part of there's Kenny Gifford, when he was part of, they would broadcast some of his jumps and whatnot. He's kind of disappeared a bit in recent years, but our thoughts and prayers go out to Robbie Knievel's family as well. Good morning, Kenny. Louis, who's here? Louis Stellato, where is he? I can't see him. How come? Well, maybe he's not speaking up. What do we got here? Good morning, all. Talking to Bills. Only because the Bengals O-line is banged up. Listen, I understand. I get that. And that's one of the reasons I have a little bit of pause here for this game, right? But if you remember last year, Joe Burrow's offensive line played horrible. He was sacked 19 times in the playoffs last year. He knows how to play it under this type of duress. The key for him, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I wanted to get into yesterday's games first, but this is the stream of consciousness. If he can get the ball to Jamar Chase, he's got to have quick hitters at Jamar Chase, even to Higgins, and then you need some yards after the catch, right? I mean, yaks are important. That's Jamar Chase's game. If they can do that, and Mixon can run the ball a little bit, and they can force Josh Allen into some turnovers, and he does still have that propensity, it could be a game. The old man had broken every bone in his body. Imagine, you look at something like the Caesar Palace jump. I believe that's the one that was the worst ever. I mean, he looked like a rag doll. And he got up and walked away from almost all of these things. I'm pretty sure he got up and walked away from every one of these. Frank Gifford, who is his good friend, carried him off many, many times. And I was really, really looking for that. Louis may have played some. Louis may have. Everybody got it. We talked about this a little in the chat room too. There was a lot of tackle in the basketball on Saturdays, just playing for fun in the high school gym. And you were involved in some of that, Rick. You and we talked about this one time before. You and Stanley Corona definitely had a couple of run-ins. One memorable one for me. Drew, I have to feel the Bengals, considering how the NFL keeps screwing them. Even if you think they won't. You know what? Here's the thing. I agree with you, Drew, by the way. I think the Bengals got screwed horribly in this. And again, here's the thing. If the NFL had gone by what I said they should do, which was go by the rules in the book, which is highest winning percentage, that always takes precedent. They wouldn't have gotten it. They wouldn't have gotten home field if they were playing the Buffalo or Kansas City, unless I'm totally off the mark there. I don't think I am. But the Bills are ticked off, and I think that will play into this. I said this last week. This team's angry. There's an old saying that, no good deed goes unpunished, and they did everything they needed to do in that Monday night game, and they got it stuck right to them. I mean, they were the only team that would have no chance to play at home during this championship run. They could either play a team on the road or they could play at a neutral site, which I guess they have no chance to play at a neutral site. And I guess I shouldn't say they have no chance to play at home, because if Jacksonville had won, or they would have had a chance to play at home, but that wasn't going to happen. So I agree. I mean, they get totally screwed by the NFL. And the NFL, as I said when it happened, they'll find a way to screw this up. Rick was the main event in tackle basketball. I have to agree. Rick and Stanley too. They Stanley played like a football player / wrestler. Pain and killers. Pain and painkillers or killers. I'm not sure where we're at. Oh, we got to be talking about evil, right? Anyway, let's jump into the games yesterday. Good start to the show today, guys. Thank you for that. Thanks for making me laugh. I love to do the show and laugh, because I try to intermix my head exploding and laughing my ass off, because that's what I do. This is what we do here. We have a lot of fun doing it. So let's take a look at yesterday's games. Let's look quickly. We'll spend as much time as needed, obviously, but I do want to get into the baseball today, and I want to get into my little odd sport as well. Yesterday's games, Jaguars were, look at another perspective thing, right? 9-8. You win a playoff game. You're in the divisional round game with arguably, the best or one of the best teams in the AFC, and you're right in the game, most of it. Trevor Lawrence didn't play badly, I didn't think. ETN ran the ball well. I thought they should have run the ball a little bit better. Some bad turnovers. Bad turnover by Agnew. Inside the 10-yard line, I think it was. Very bad turnover. And he actually helped set the tone for Jacksonville staying in this game, especially early with some of his special teams play. And we talk about special teams all the time. And I think special teams had an effect. Good special teams play had an effect on this game on both sides. Agnew spurring on Jacksonville with a couple of decent runs, especially early. And then the Kansas City special teams shutting him down late and playing some field position. So, look, they didn't play horrible football. And Kirk getting hurt, he had some drops. Then he got hurt, and that hurt them. But early in this game, I think it was early in the second quarter, Mahomes gets hurt, hurts his ankle. Chad Penny comes in and plays a near perfect second quarter. All he did was lead them on a 98-yard touchdown drive. One of the great drives in playoff history by a guy who just came in the game cold, who hadn't played. I don't know if Chad Henne played 10 downs all year. And if he did, they weren't in high-pressure situations. So great job by Chad Henne, who's been around forever. He was a starter in Jacksonville for a year and a half or so, 10 years ago. So he's not a young buck, and great job. Kansas City runs the football well. Pacheco, who out of nowhere runs for like 800 yards this year. He was a seventh round, if I'm not wrong, seventh round draft pick out of Rutgers. Great job yesterday, 95 yards. He had big runs right and left. McKinnon had a couple big runs, not a lot, a good average, but he had some good runs. Kadarius Toney, who's played really well, special teams, and at the wide receiver spot. The Giants have to be kicking themselves in the butt. And I'll get to your comments here in a second. They got to be kicking themselves in the butt, letting Kadarius Thomas. They just released him. I know he had some problems with the Jets, and maybe his personality clashes with the coaching staff, but he played very well once he got to Kansas City. Been a big part of this offense. Imagine the Giants had him back, and Evan Engram, who also played in this game. Not his best game, but he had 5 catches for 31 yards. I saw him make some blocks that the Mad New Yorker says he can't block. He's not a tight end. Yes, he is. He turned into the 4th best tight end in football this year. Coaching makes a difference, and the Giants cut bait with him. I don't blame the Giants, but imagine if they had Toney and Ingram on this team yesterday, they would have had a more fighting chance to win here. So Kansas City and by the way, I said this early. I said this in the offseason. Everybody, especially after Tyreek Hill left to go to Miami or was traded, that the Chiefs were going to take a step backwards. And I said, the demise of the Chiefs has been greatly exaggerated. And I said, the guy who makes this team all go, this offense go, outside of Patrick Mahomes, was not Tyreek Hill. It was Travis Kelce. 14 catches, a record for tight ends yesterday. Broke his own record. What a tremendous player. Let me get to your comments here. I think it's the first one we missed. Mahomes' injury could be bad for Kansas City. It came up this morning when I was on with Mac and Jack. I really didn't get a chance to comment. There's no doubt in my mind he'll play, but what it really takes away from him, and you saw this in the second half yesterday, the way he improvises, that's the part of his game that makes him so good. He gets flushed out of the pocket. He throws on the run. He runs. He's a sneaky runner. You see him running for first downs all the time, but he doesn't run for big yardage totals like Daniel Jones or Hurts or Lamar Jackson. But he gets big runs. Well, that part of his game is out. And throwing from all these weird positions, that hurts him. You saw it yesterday. I want to say in the fourth quarter, he had a little. They had a little swing screen set up to I think Tony. He threw the ball about 5 yards short of him because he couldn't plant his foot. So it takes away that improvisation, that he can, that makes him so good. That part will be gone. We'll see how good he can play out of the pocket now. The neutral site. Yeah. By the way, Atlanta, I don't know. I don't like it. If you're going to make it if you were going to make the Kansas City, the only way this would ever be okay with me is if you just said the AFC Championship game was going to be at a neutral site, no matter what. Alan asked a question yesterday in our group. I didn't get a chance to answer it. I mean, they had to start selling tickets. Another reason the Bengals are mad. You saw Joe Mixon's comments this week. He was upset that they're selling tickets. You got to start selling tickets. You can't wait until tomorrow to start selling tickets for a game that's coming Sunday. But you know what? Another slight to the Bengals in their mind, and I do agree. I don't like this neutral site thing. And I agree. The Bengals, again, I say the Bengals get screwed, but so do Kansas City or Buffalo, depending on the situation. Again, this was handled badly from a PR standpoint by the team. Darts app. I was hooked on it last night while I was watching. The Giant game got so bad I got hooked on the Darts app last night, CA. I almost call you Excalibur. So I'm hooked on a Darts app on my phone. Lawrence has grown up this season. I wasn't sure he would. He did. And that, the difference between the kids like Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, I thought Zach Wilson would grow up this year. That's why I thought, again, the Jets are a really good football team, except for the quarterback. They've got talent, but they don't have a quarterback. Trevor Lawrence grew up this year during the season. Really matured, had a really good second half. Now, he had a bad first half last week, but you saw him rebound. That's a mark of maturity right there. A lot of quarterbacks put their head between their legs and just walk away when they've thrown 4 interceptions and they're down 20 points at halftime, 20 plus points at halftime. Technically, the assumption in playing him was that an injured Mahomes. I agree with that. There's 2 ways you go here, and it came up again this morning on the Mac and Jack and Jim show that the game was in hand. So maybe Andy Reid should have kept Mahomes out. The game wasn't in hand. I mean, it was, what was it, 17-10 at halftime? after Henny had a really good drive there, ate up the clock, did a great job. Now, I don't know that Chad Henne stays in the whole second half. He doesn't make a big mistake. As long as the guy's not going to get hurt more, he needs to play. He's your star. He needs to play. You need to lose with him. If he sits on the bench and he could have played, but Andy Reid decided, Henne gives us a better chance. Andy Reid gets roasted if they lose this game. So he did make a good call. It is an interesting viewpoint. There's two ways to look at this. But I think he made the right call. Paula says 15 downs. That's his job, and he did it to perfection. I would say that probably was 15. Hats off to the coach who trusted him in total and just kept the same scheme. Listen, backup quarterbacks go on. They're underrated because the really good ones, you have to be prepared to play at all times. You don't get the snaps all week, but you still have to know the game plan and you still have to be prepared. And we've seen countless times where guys are not. I can remember a famous example with the Patriots back, I think probably before the dynasty, late 90s. And I want to say Damon Heward, there was two of them, but I want to say Damon Heward was the backup quarterback, had to play because Bledsoe got hurt. And he admitted after the game he wasn't prepared. Guess what happened to him on Monday? Cut. Great job. And again, Andy Reid's a great coach. Andy Reid knows Chad Henne's strengths are different than Patrick Mahomes. I don't know how many times he threw the ball in that drive, but he threw the ball really well, and I know they ran the ball well. And that's a big difference in this team, by the way. Running the ball very, very well, as I said. 144 yards rushing yesterday, averaging about 4.8 yards a carry. Good job. Kadarius Toney, what I call him, Andrew Toney. Kadarius Toney played really good football with this team last year, or this year. It is last year when you think about most of the season. The Giants probably are kicking themselves. I don't know. Or maybe he was that bad a guy they didn't. One of the worst things Ken can do is look as if you didn't deserve to be in the playoffs. I disagree. They played badly, but they played a really good football team. That team is so much better than the Giants. It's pathetic. It does not mean the Giants didn't deserve to be in the playoffs. Really good teams have gotten beaten in the playoffs badly before. The Patriots have gotten beaten badly in the playoffs during their 20-year run. It did highlight that the difference between the Eagles and the Giants is pretty huge. We can jump over to that game right now. They ran for 268 yards last night. So the Giants defense let them down. The fact that Daniel Jones has no weapons hamstrings him. The Eagles defense controls the line of scrimmage, doesn't let Barkley really run the ball, although he averaged 7 yards a carry almost last night. But the Giants couldn't commit to the run because before you knew it, they were down 21-0. The lack of weapons on this team is, as I said, Kadarius Toney, whatever I called him the first time, Evan Engram. Imagine those weapons. This team's, you don't have a way to come back from down probably 14-0, much less 21 and then 28-0. Ricky James catches some balls, but a lot of those were the game was already over. Last year's hero, Hodkins, only caught one ball for 3 yards. That's correct. Just disappeared. When you only got to take one or two guys out of the game, it makes it much simpler. This Eagles team is very good. Hurts played well here. He had to throw for 54 yards. He threw the ball 24 times, 2 touchdowns. Giants kind of controlled his running. He only ran 9 times. Well, that's a lot of runs for a quarterback. I get that. But for 34 yards, he did get a touchdown. But the difference in these two teams was the defensive pressure the Eagles put on Daniel Jones and with nowhere to go with the football. They didn't protect him, which was always been a problem. Sacked him 5 times. God knows how many times he was hurried. Nowhere to go with the football. And again, look at Daniel Jones didn't play a good football game. I'm not excusing him. But again, it's about perspective. Just as I said, with the Jacksonville Jaguars, if you told any Giant fan you were going to win 10 games once you count the playoff game and win a playoff game, you'd have been ecstatic. And Daniel Jones would make the progress under Brian Daboll and Kafka that he did. You'd have been ecstatic. So you went on the road and won a playoff game. Does that make the Giants getting beat badly yesterday? Is that a indictment of the whole season? I don't think so. So again, if a good coach, because I'll tell you what, you remember the Giants back in the 80s. They absorbed some really bad playoff defeats under Bill Parcells before that team won the Super Bowl against Denver. You use that. A good coach will use that and make his team better. And if your players aren't mentally tough enough to take this as a learning experience, then get new players. Peterson and his coaching staff should get a ton of credit for Lawrence. I talked earlier this morning about, imagine a little revisionist history here. Byron Leftwich, and people have seemed to have forgotten this, had that job. He was offered the job and verbally accepted the job last year and then overreached, asking for whatever he was asking for. I don't remember all the particulars. I don't even know if we got all the particulars. But they decided to walk away from Byron Leftwich and turn their attention to Doug Peterson. I don't think this team is 9-8 and wins a playoff game with Byron Leftwich in year one. Byron Leftwich might someday be a very good head coach. But this team had some pitfalls and some roller coaster times this year, and I don't know if they recover under a rookie head coach the way they did under Doug Peterson. And I don't know that Lawrence, as to Drew's point here, Byron Leftwich has been an offensive coordinator and a quarterback coach his entire career, but I'm not sure that Lawrence matures in the second half of the season after some of the rocky games they had the way that he did. Alan, good morning. If I didn't say good morning to you earlier, sorry about that. I might have missed that. What did you say earlier? Did I miss something important? If I did, you'd put it up again for me, would you? Lawrence is a leader and personally excited to see how well he does in the future. I think you saw a kid come of age in that the second half of the season, the second half of the Charger game. The kid doesn't quit. Plus, he took it. You see the one he had last night? I want to say it was in the fourth quarter. It was before the fumble. It might have been the play before the fumble or a couple plays before the fumble by Agnew inside the 10. He ran, I want to say, 20 yards for a first down, close to it, and doesn't go out of bounds. He lowers his shoulder. Now, he did a smart thing, too. He turned his throwing shoulder away and absorbed a big hit. He's a big kid. I think he's 6'6". But he's a weapon. You'll see him run the ball when he needs to. He did it at Clemson a lot. He needs to stop hanging out the Waffle House after midnight. I thought, you know what? Most of these guys would be out at some club and, whatever, loading up their handguns, smacking their women around, whatever. I know I'm probably offending half of the NFL, whatever. He's at a Waffle House after winning the game last Sunday. I thought that was one of the coolest things I saw. In hindsight, the Jaguars could have won this game. Too many missed opportunities. Don't disagree, but they didn't. At the end of the day, the better team won this game. And not the better team that day. Sometimes it's just a better team that day. I've seen that a lot. The better team overall won this game. And by the way, I said The Kansas City defense is better. Kansas City defense came up with some big plays. I understand that, Jaguars were able to move the football here and there. They didn't put the ball in the end zone a lot. This defense is a bit underrated. We figured that out. Mike McCoy, Jaguars quarterback coach. Every team, I say this all the time, every team needs a really good quarterback coach to work with the offensive coordinator and the quarterback. Every team. Jets did Zach Wilson no favors this year. They let John Beck walk away, who did a really good job with him in the second half last year, and they should have kept him around. The Patriots with Mac Jones this year. Joe Judge is not a strong quarterback coach. He doesn't know what Mac Jones is going through, trying to learn a new offense with guys who have never coached offense before. You need somebody who can mentor these kids through these tough times. And when you put strong guys in place, like you've got a Doug Peterson and a Mike McCoy, that helps that kid during those rocky times. Does anyone know a backup quarterback has 4 Super Bowl rings? I have 2 guesses. Terry Hanratty or Matt Cavanaugh. Tell me how I did, Kenny. Should the interview process for coaches be changed? Coordinators, I don't disagree with this at all. The problem is the teams that are looking for coaches need to be, the brakes got to be put on. I mean, there are some rules where you can't do it. There's only certain windows you can do it, but there are windows that take their focus away from winning games. Now, I'm not sure which coaches, without looking at my list, which coaches were involved in losing games that might have affected the outcome because they were out interviewing during the week. But yes, there's no reason this situation can't wait until at least the Super Bowl week. I mean, they changed the rules a while back, if you remember, because there was a time you couldn't interview until the playoffs were over. And the coaches on Super Bowl teams, where some of the best coaches are, were handcuffed. So I don't know what the right answer is. Maybe they need to go back to that. I think at that time you could interview those guys on the first week in between the 2-week layoff. I don't think Kenny Golladay is a world-class weapon. What did he do yesterday? Did he even see the field yesterday, Drew? He didn't get a target. Well, he didn't get a catch. Maybe he had a target. I don't know. What a waste. What a waste of talent because he's a good player. And what a waste for the Giants bringing him in here. We'll get into today's games here and just we're going to pivot here to today's game so we can move on probably at 9:30 or so. NFC title game should be a great game regardless of who the Eagles play. It'll be the 49ers. I'm sorry. I really am sorry, Alan. Your team played well last week, but they're playing a real defense this week. They're playing a team with weapons all over the football field. Their only hope is to really fool Brock Purdy. If you can disguise your coverages, show them one thing, before the snap and do something different after the snap, you can confuse a young quarterback. But unless they get him to turn over the football. And again, I know Dak Prescott had a great game last week, but he's still got one more playoff win than Daniel Jones, right? I think I always get that number wrong. Maybe he's got 2. What's your question anyway? As a fan, I really want to see Hurts versus Prescott because they were robbed of it twice. Stop. Robbed of what? But the 49ers can give Philly a great game too. Please tell me what you're saying you were robbed of. And if you're telling me officials or somebody else, please stop. Nobody should ever say they got screwed by officials, ever. Don't put yourself in a position to do that. Oh, I see what you're saying. First game, Dak was out. So what? I mean, injuries happen. I don't want to see that Cowboys and Eagles because I think it'll be a mess. Leftwich wanted the Jaguars to fire. Oh, that's right. He didn't want Trent Baalke to come in. Thank you very much. He wanted Trent Baalke out. He did a pretty good job this year, didn't he? Lucky against the Bills in that Super Bowl. Kickers. Boy, CA, what do you got here? Lucky against the Bills in that Super Bowl. Kicker, shaking my head. Remember those members of Giants, Jim Kelly. Listen, Jim Kelly and that Bills team was a great football team. And if they don't kick the ball wide right, maybe they win 3 of those 4 Super Bowls instead of losing all 4. But once that wide right came, it seemed like they just were waiting for the other shoe to fall anytime they got to the Super Bowl, and they got to 4 in a row. Getting to 4 Super Bowls in a row is quite an accomplishment. I understand you didn't win the big game. I don't think any other team has reached 4 Super Bowls in a row, so there's something to be said for that. Those are great teams that will go down in history as losers, but they did a great job. Marv Levy did a great job with those teams. Chiefs defense coordinator is underrated. Spagnuolo was a great coach. He certainly designed a great scheme to beat the only 18-0 team ever in NFL history that soon finished 18-1. And if you look behind me, you can probably figure out who I'm talking about. He's a great coach. Another guy we talked about, I guess that was earlier too in the Max Shack and Jim show, that we talked about great coordinators who weren't great head coaches. Steve Spagnuolo is one guy. Mark Malone. I'm not sure. We got to check that, Kenny. I wouldn't think Mark Malone, maybe he was. He had to be with the Steelers, right? Or maybe he was with somebody else after that. Probably not one team. Anyway, that's a good one. I would have thought Henry or Kavanaugh because I was thinking of the Steelers and 49ers dynasties there in the 70s and 80s. Random thought in my head. 5 quarterbacks that make the playoffs are up for a new deal. Yeah. A big one in New York. Obviously, a big question is what to do with Daniel Jones. I think you got to keep him. 5 quarterbacks in the playoffs. So that was Tom Brady. Tom Brady's going to a different team, by the way, or retiring, and I hope he retires. Who else? Can't count him because they didn't play. Daniel Jones. Geno Smith. How many is that? 3? You might be counting Lamar. You might be counting guys that are hurt too. I'm assuming because I don't think there's 5 guys that are starting now. Jimmy Garoppolo, Lamar Jackson. These guys could all be franchised, by the way. They're unrestricted free agents, but they could certainly all walk away. Going to be very interesting quarterback carousel coming up in this offseason. Both D'Amico Ryans and Dan Quinn had multiple interviews this week, had a balance. I agree. This shouldn't be happening. We'll see if it affects, at least they're both were distracted this week. Both defensive coordinators for the 2 teams playing each other. And just as a side note, I think DeMarco Ryans has a much better chance of getting a head coaching job than Dan Quinn. There's our boy, Dan Harris, all the way from the UK, the guru of Let's Talk Sports. The only way you could do it is to, and I think we're talking about the, it looks like we're talking about the interview process. The only way you could do it is look at and wait until after the Super Bowl. And you would have to delay free agency or put you at a disadvantage. Good point, Dan. And you used to have to wait till after the Super Bowl, and it hurt the Super Bowl staffs and that they wouldn't get jobs. I don't know if there's a really good answer here. Alan, thought you had turned the corner with Dak. Very disappointed. No, Kenny, because one brilliant game against a team that had played with one hand time behind their back because they weren't any good. And, Dak's going back to the Hall of Fame. Injuries happen. 49ers good and kept with their scheme, and it's still working out. I love the 49ers. I picked before the playoffs, I picked the Bengals and the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl. I think the 49ers would win that game, and I still think the 49ers get there. I think the Eagle 49er game would be, sorry, Alan, a much better game than the Cowboys and the Eagles. I understand why Cowboys and Eagle fans want the game. The Philly sports guy said it on Mac and Jacks. He wants the Cowboys. I would want the Cowboys if I was an Eagle fan too, because I'm not beating the 49ers. There. I said it. Cowboy fans will be setting the world on fire if Dak gets beat by the last pick in the draft. That would be awesome. Dan, that is an awesome. And Dan, thanks so much for stopping in this morning. I know that it's tough for you guys. If you don't follow Let's Talk Sports as well as Northeast Streaming Sports, please do it. Follow him on Facebook. Go to his YouTube page because all of my content will be there, and I have other content that goes exclusively there besides TGI Sports Talk. But get out there and Let's Talk Sports. Dan does a great job, and we hope to see Dan back on the air. I do a show called Let's Talk New York Sports with Dan, and I can't wait until he's back in the seat next to me, if metaphorically speaking. And that's not a metaphor. Drew, help me out. What would that be? He's not actually in the seat next to me. Figuratively sitting next to me. All the keys can be handled today with the trips for the playoffs and coaching. All the keys can be handled today with trips, without trips for. Well, there is that. I mean, you can. Let's see. I think you're talking about not needing to do interviews in person, CA. And if I'm wrong, let me know. I will tell you from a personal perspective during COVID and trying to interview people virtually, it isn't even close to the same thing as having somebody in the same room with you. It's not even close. There's too many things that there's little things you can't pick up on when you're not across the table from somebody. If you're talking about something else, I apologize. You can certainly spell it out. I would take Todd Bowles, the Vikings defensive coordinator, replacing Donatello. They should replace him. I agree. Todd Bowles is a much better coordinator than he is a head coach, and he's had one winning season in 5. Not sure how long he coached with the Jets, 3 or 4 years. I think it was 4 years. He had one winning record there. Didn't make the playoffs. Makes the playoffs with an 8-9 team. A team that was in the playoffs and won 12 games last year. Now I understand they lost and they were not as good. They're older. Tom Brady looks like a 45-year-old guy at times. He turns back the clock sometimes. He's still better than most of the quarterbacks in the NFL. He's probably still a top 10 quarterback. But there are times in games, I saw him do things Monday night that I have never seen Tom Brady do. Desperate, throwing the ball where there's 4 guys out there around his guy. Interceptions and bad spots. Not that he's never made those mistakes, but Bills went to 4 Super Bowls in a row. They didn't go to 5 in 6 years. Bills have not been to 5 Super Bowls. They've only been to the 4. Somebody give me some confirmation, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, Kenny. Steelers. I didn't think Mark Malone was on those teams there in the 70s. Mark Malone, I thought, got drafted in the 80s. By the way, little trivia or useless knowledge. We'll call it that because I'm not going to ask a question. If you're a fan of Magnum PI, which I was, not this ridiculous remake, which I hate, I won't even watch it. I see the commercials and I cringe. Tom Selleck obviously was Thomas Magnum PI. He was a football player in college when he went to the Naval Academy, I want to say. And in those scenes where there are football scenes, Mark Malone is the guy playing quarterback and playing basically Magnum PI playing football. Well, then Jim Kelly was in front of JJ's no salary cap window. Well, he was. Definitely was. There was no salary cap in the 80s and 90s. Geno Hurts, Lamar, Herbert, Geno Hurts. I don't think Jalen Hurts is up. Let me take a quick look here. Can I sort this by alphabetically? Hang on 1 second. I think I can. Yeah, Hurts is not. He could be a limited. I've only got unlimited free agents or unrestricted free agents up here, so it's possible he could be up for a new deal. So I didn't look at the full list because to me it's not relevant. When you the guys who are restricted free agents don't often move unless there's a trade involved. So what else you got here? Herbert, again, he's got to be restricted. So these aren't guys that they need to. They'll be back with their teams, right? They're not unrestricted. They can't just walk away. And any of these guys, even the restricted guys, could get franchised. So Burrow, now you got me curious. Let me look at the restricted free agents. Well, let me look at all types. Hang on 1 second here. You got me going here, Anthony. Burrow? I don't know. I don't have Joe Burrow on my list of free agents at all. And I don't have Hurts on my list of free agents either. I'm not sure about that information. Jones definitely, Lamar definitely, Geno definitely. But I don't think the other guys are. Maybe send me a link to where you got the information. We'll take a look at it, Anthony. Picked Buffalo before the season. You're right, Alan. I will attest to the fact that my Bengals 49ers pick was before the playoffs. Before the season, I picked the Rams. That was a great pick, right? And I did pick Buffalo, who still got a shot to be there, but I will go against that pick now. Just because I picked them, 7 months ago, I'm not going to stick with it. Dan is the man, right? Good job. We love Dan Harris. Send Dan a quick note, too. And wish him well as he continues his battle. Pags was barely breathing this morning after being yeah, if you watch Pag, listen, if you don't follow the Philly sports guy, you probably should. Did you see if you watch his cut-ins from the stadium? He had Carl Banks on. He did a really good job yesterday. He had Giant fans, and he gets the opposing fans to interact with him. And for you guys who don't know the Philly sports guy, he gets all dolled up in his Eagle colors, silver and green, and where's his? I think he's wearing a Carson Wentz jersey, but well, that's another matter. But he's very interesting. Correct. I'm correct. Just subscribe to Let's Talk Sports. Do it. Steak sandwich, Keith. What are we betting on, Kenny? Have it the Malone thing? I'd have to pay off because I'm too close to you. Tell me what the steak sandwich wager is for. Let's spell it out accurately, and I'll tell you yes or no. And I'll meet you and buy lunch if I have to. We'll meet you at BJ's. Haven't DVR'd Prime TV since the Prime Time. Haven't DVR'd Prime Time. Well, you don't have to anymore because of on demand. You don't have to really DVR anything. We do record some things to get through commercials and whatnot, but with streaming and everything being on demand, basically, you don't even need a DVR stuff. You probably got to tell people what DVRs are. They don't even know. I'm just saying sign them. Oh, I see what you're saying. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, the Giants could have done that with Daniel Jones, and I understand why they didn't because they wanted to find out whether he was going to be the guy going forward, and whether a new coach, he would work in his system, which he worked tremendously. They'll probably pay a lot more for him than they would have if they'd locked him up sooner. So it's an excellent point. And Lamar can walk unless they franchise him or sign him long term. And I guess he's a little happier now that Greg Roman's gone. Keith wins a steak sandwich research. Malone joined the Steelers in 1980. I didn't even know he was there for one. Good job. Thank you, Drew. Now, I'd like to know how many Terry Hanratty and Kavanaugh got. Well, you don't need to do all that research. I'll do it myself. Keith would pay, unlike Johnny Mancini, who has slipped away into the night. Well, Mark's been busy. But Mark, by the way, Mark Mancini's been on fire with his show, some of his shows, doing some great interviews. Reggie Jackson he's had on recently, Dusty Baker, doing some really good stuff. And he's been busy. That's why he hasn't been on with us. And Jim Beringer I would have had Jim Beringer on today, but Jim was traveling, wanted me to co-host the Let's Talk Hockey show on Let's Talk Sports tomorrow night. And I really can't do it, or I would have talked some hockey with him then. But so Jim will be back with us next week to update us on some hockey. And by the way, speaking of interviews, getting very close, probably in March, we'll be back to doing some interviews. They'll be taped. So it won't be any audience participation. It's hard during interviews to get everybody involved. Maybe beforehand, I can tell you if I'm doing interviews and if you have some questions you want answered, I'll try to fit them in. But they'll be, and then we'll air them. I don't know. Depending on how many we can get in the can. Dan Harris is going to help me with this. I stopped doing it because of legwork. I couldn't produce these shows, track down guests, and do a real job and provide all the content that I do. So I want to get back into doing interviews, and we're going to do them. So we'll keep you abreast of that. I saw this comment yesterday, by the way, and I kind of got a chuckle. Jaguars get Calvin Ridley next year, and he gives theoretically, by the way, I wanted to comment when you posted this in the community of sports, and a great group to follow, by the way. Give Alan and that group over there a plug. Very good group and a bunch of fun stuff posted, but there was a thread that I was following a little bit, and I saw this post. There's no guarantee Calvin Ridley will be on this team next year. Calvin Ridley has some serious mental health issues that hopefully he's working through. And if he does get back, then maybe we can get some tips and bet on DraftKings, because he also got suspended for gambling. So Calvin Ridley's a great player. If he could suit up, he would be a huge addition to this team. Suit up and stay on the field. Pags, I will allow WE as he is part of the show. Pags, I will allow. Well, you know my feelings on we. I've got about 40. I had season tickets for 10 years. I've got with the Patriots. Between the Yankees and the Patriots, I must have purchased about, I don't know, $20,000 worth of merchandise and wearables over the years. I'm a wee, buddy. And I will say that forever. And anybody who follows their team religiously and doesn't root for multiple teams, Alan, sorry, I can't let you say we when you also root for other teams, with the Rangers even. Rick, you're a one-team guy. You can say we. When you invest emotional support, when I care more about the games than some of the players, I can say we. Speaking of Let's Talk Sports, Alan has his interview show Sunday nights. Sit down tonight, and we'll be on with the Cowboy 49er pregame show today. So catch Alan on Let's Talk Sports. He does a really good job. He's really making some great strides. Alan, you've been doing a great job, and I mean this in the best way possible. I don't mean this in a bad way. You've made tremendous strides in these last few months. You've done a great job. Kirk is becoming a number one. Ridley's not a number one. What he does, though, I agree with you, Anthony, but Kirk is, I don't know how to explain. He's not going to be a guy who beats you down the field. He beats you across the field. He's your go-to guy. He moves the chains. He's a really good player. Ridley would help this team because he gives them a downfield threat that right now is a little bit lacking. You got Marvin Jones. The Patriots could use a guy like Ridley, but again, I don't know if I can trust him. So looking quickly, I want to move on. It's 9:31, but looking quickly at today's games. Again, I gave you my picks. We can talk. We'll talk I'll give you 5 more minutes if you want, and we can go back before the show's over if we have time. I do want to get into some baseball. My picks today, I like the 49ers a lot. I just think that the offensive weapons are too much for Dallas. Dallas defense, if they can confuse Purdy and force him into mistakes, they can potentially win this game. But I don't think that's going to happen. The 49ers and Shanahan have put Purdy in a position to succeed. They don't ask him to do a lot of things he can't do, and they've got a really good, smart coaching staff that can sniff out when they're trying to disguise their defenses. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Dak, I don't trust in a big moment managing the game. Still the same thing. And when it comes to the Bills and Bengals, I am going to stick with the Bengals pick. I'm a little leery because of the offensive lineman being out, but this isn't a new situation for Joe Burrow. He's played like this forever and found ways to win and almost won a Super Bowl without an offensive line last year. I think Joe Mixon runs the ball a little better today. I think he gets more involved in the passing game. I think they get quick hits to Lamar Jackson. Now, by saying that, I've totally lost it. Jamar Chase. Oh, God. And Higgins. And I do think they find a way to move the chains, score enough, and maybe their defense is, I think, better than Buffalo's. I think it's better than Kansas City's. I think they can probably force Allen into a turnover, too. So we'll see how that goes. What do you got here? Will Beasley be a major factor today? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. It's possible he will be. But here's the thing. He's not one of my favorite guys in the NFL, by the way. But Cole Beasley, I don't know. I don't think he's had that big an impact since he's come back. But he could be a guy that can bail Josh Allen out when he's having some trouble. Josh Allen's got some tremendous weapons besides Cole Beasley, obviously. Davis, Diggs, McKenzie, just tremendous weapons at that wide receiver position. So Beasley, I don't know. I just don't see him being that big a factor today. Just my thought. I don't know what their game plan is, obviously. And guys come out of nowhere to have nice games. See Hodkins last week, although he'd been playing well the second half of the season. Cowboys do lead the league in takeaways, so it's possible. That's their chance to me, Alan. If they got a rookie quarterback who's played unlike a rookie quarterback. He's played as good as a rookie quarterback can possibly play. Not named Dan Marino. And I do think that that's their only chance to win this game. I just don't think he'll make the mistakes or enough of them. I'd have to look back. I'll take your word for that. Again, I am not a huge fan. I'm not as big a fan as Dan Quinn as other people are. I'm not as big a fan as Dallas defense as other people are. They played well last week against a really undermanned Tampa Bay team who's not that good. But I've seen this team give up a boatload of points in some games this year. We'll see. Both the Bills and Cowboys have passed on the head case Odell. You know, it's funny. It seemed like Odell was trying to take control of that whole situation, right? We'll see if he plays somewhere next year. Odell was going to make his choice. And we waited and waited and waited. Maybe he'll make it a choice and play in the Super Bowl. I don't know. 4 Super Bowl losses tied with the Vikings, right? That's exactly right. Not 4 in a row for the Vikings, though. Again, I think it's a very impressive. I think these Bills, again, they didn't win. I get it. But I think they take a knocking. It is not easy to get to 4 Super Bowls in a row. Great job. Good morning, Billy Pulver. Good to have you with us, Waldo. As always, I don't know how your Jets did yesterday. Maybe you can fill us in on their score. It's probably the same as the Patriots. Fun stat of the day. The Eagles have created sacks on 11.2%. It's pretty accurate. Exact total of their plays. Next closest is Dallas with 8.3. All right. I don't buy, I can't get into these overall stats because how many of them come against the really weak sisters of the league? How many of them come against really bad offensive lines? I mean, you could sack Joe Burrow, for instance. I know they're not playing each other right yet. You could sack Joe Burrow 7 times in a game and he'll still beat you. So again, it's an important. We throw out numbers, not just you, Al. I'm not faulting you because it's, again, you grew up with all these numbers, but without any context, right? I hate like 3rd down stats, 4th down stats. I don't want to see stats at a team's completed X percentage of their 3rd down plays because every 3rd down is not the same. So they say that means 3rd and inches is the same as 3rd and 25. Anyway, what do you got here? Allen gave up on Dallas when they were. Hey, hang on a second here. I think we're bashing Allen and the Cowboys. Always true to my school, though. I bash my teams, but I'm always true to my teams. Anyway, what else I got in football real quick? The Mahomes, and I'll move on. I promise, Drew, I'm going to football here real quick. We'll get into the coaching carousel last week. A lot of there's going to be a lot of movement here in the coming weeks, both head coaches and coordinators. There was a couple, let me see. I just want to give you a couple. Jim Schwartz did sign with the Browns as defensive coordinator. Monty Ossenfort is a general manager with the Cardinals recently, and Ron Carthon is the new general manager of the Titans. And we'll get into maybe later on, if we have time at the end of the show, we'll look more at some of the interviews. We don't have to do that. We can get into that next week because no changes are going to happen before next week. We talked a little bit about free agent quarterbacks, and we can do that in the coming weeks as well. Peyton Hillis out of the hospital after saving the 2 kids drowning. Good news there. And DeMar Hamlin continues his recovery. The doctors do say he's got a little bit of ways to go, and right now there's really no real prognosis that he will ever play football again. They're focusing on him having a life. Brady will not. I will bet you as many steak sandwiches as you want that Tom Brady does not return to the Patriots. Now, if Tom Brady doesn't retire, by the way, he could go to the Raiders. A lot of talk about Rodgers and Brady with the Raiders. He could go to the 49ers if they don't think Brock Purdy is really the long-term answer this minute. And then there's talk about the Titans and even the Jets. He's not coming back to the Patriots. I would love him to come back for a year and mentor Mac Jones, but he's not coming back. Dak and Judge win when the money's on the line and it's Apple in the throat. Dak and the Judge win, but when the money, I get it. Yes, they don't win the big games. I get it. Good call, Kenny. Let's move on to some. I want to get my. There we go. First of all, I want to talk about Sal Bando as we move into baseball. Sal Bando played, God, how long did he play? 16 seasons he played in the major leagues. Most of them with the Kansas City / Oakland A's. Came up at 22 years old, was the first, I would say he was the first of those 70 A's teams, the dynasty teams that came to that team, came to the major leagues. Was their first star. And while his overall numbers are underwhelming, he hit 254 for lifetime, 242 home runs, 1,039 RBIs. That's not bad, for sure, and a solid defensive player. Sal Bando, what he brought to the clubhouse and as a leader on that Oakland A's team is what really put him over the top. He later went and played with Milwaukee for 5 years. Once the free agency became the what am I looking for? When free agency became an open market in baseball, he moved on to Milwaukee, where he also became the GM for many years as well, and oversaw Milwaukee's rise. He was on the teams as they started to get better, and then he was part of the organization when they were making the playoffs. 82, 83. 82, I guess, was the only year. They went to the World Series in 82 and lost. But Sal Bando also finished, people don't realize this. I said 4 times. 3 times he finished in the top 5 in MVP voting. He finished 13th another time, 16th another time, 22nd and 30th 2 other times. That's not too bad. And again, do I think Sal Bando's a Hall of Famer? I do not. But I think Sal Bando's the kind of player that every team today could use. He's the kind of guy, when I talk about leadership, and some guys don't get it, and I know our key factor in that conversation is not here with us today, at least so far. Leaders matter, and Sal Bando was a leader of that A's team. The only teams since the Yankees in the 90s to win 3 straight World Series in the last 60 years. So you throw a number out there. So I want to say, rest in peace to Sal Bando. You did some great things in your life. You're a great man. Came out of Arizona State. I think you probably played with Reggie at Arizona State. Had a pretty famous fight. A couple of fights. That team fought right and left. They'd fight during the playoffs. They'd fight during the World Series, rolling around on the dugout. Raleigh Fingers and Blue Moon Odom would be fighting, and Reggie and Bando, and every night there was somebody else fighting. And by the way, kind of tied to today, that team won 3 straight World Series, and fans would show up for the playoffs. But they couldn't even draw fans. They had the best team in baseball, and they were drawing 10,000 people a day, a game. And this is why this Oakland City doesn't deserve this baseball team. I know they stink now, and they're going to leave town, but Oakland doesn't have a leg to stand on, because people will say it's because they don't put a winner on the field. They didn't support them when they won. What do we got here? I mean, yeah, the Yankees are in that category now, LOL. Favorites every year. They're not favorites every year. The Astros are the favorites. Well, they're the favorite right now. They weren't my favorite last year. But 27 World Championships, I'll kind of put that up against these other teams. I know. Again, that's why we need to get rid of Brian Cashman. Funny, the first team to knock them down was Texas. Huh? What are we talking about? The trade for Joey Gallo? I mean, they never beat us on the field. What are you talking about? I need some clarification there. I did see this post somewhere the last couple days that Joe Namath has endorsed the Jets signing Aaron Rodgers and would let him wear his number 12. His number 12 that's retired. By the way, I don't think the Jets are going this direction. They went with an old Green Bay quarterback once, and how'd that work out? Bando. Great clutch hitter who really improved to be a great, I don't know, but he was certainly good. He wasn't Greg Nettles. He wasn't Brooks Robinson, but he was a, as I said in my remarks, Drew, he was certainly, a better than average third baseman and a leader. Great leader, as you say here, huge team leader. And people, you know what? He was never, at least when the A's started winning, right? And I think they went to the playoffs for the first time, I want to say in 71. He was never the best player on that team. But I would probably say he might have been the most important player on that team because of what he provided in the intangible area, which we've forgotten about that in sports today. Nobody except us old guys. Sorry, Drew. It's important. Leadership's important. Plus, he's a good player. He is not. I was wondering why the show was. Oh, you're tough, Kenny. You got a Mark Malone reference in here today. That's why the show is so good. I was able to tell you that he was a stand-in on Magnum PI. Bando had to deal with Charlie Finley. He had to deal with Reggie Jackson as a teammate. Charlie Finley. I mean, there's some books out there, guys. And I had Nancy Finley on, who's the son of Carl Finley. I did an interview with her when I was still doing interviews, which, as I said before, we'll get into. Sorry, just looking at the snowfall totals. Looks like we're going to get 3 to 6 inches here. Nice. But she kind of defended Charlie a little bit, other than the fact that her father never got much credit. But Charlie Finley, when he was a penny pincher, but then he would pay guys. He was a weird guy because he'd be a penny pincher, and he would pay guys to grow mustaches though. He would give players. He gave Claudel Washington, he tore up his contract in the middle of the season, gave him a raise, which Bowie Kuhn said he couldn't do. He created a major stir in the 73 World Series when he cut basically Mike Andrews in the middle of the series because he made a couple of huge errors that cost him a game against the Mets. And then there was a whole they tried to get him to sign an affidavit that he was hurt, and the commissioner got involved, and that was the time when Dick Williams said, "I'm done." Told his team after that game, during that whole travesty, that he was done. No matter win or lose, he was out of there. He could not deal with Charlie Finley anymore. And then, of course, once free agency was about to become commonplace in 1976, he went about selling off all his players. He sold the Vita Blue to the Yankees. He sold Raleigh Fingers and Joe Rudy to the Red Sox. In fact, there's a famous picture of Raleigh Fingers and Joe Rudy in Red Sox uniforms on the bench before a game. None of them ever played a game with those teams because Bowie Kuhn stepped in and said, that's not in the best interest of baseball. So, Charlie Finley was an interesting character. Those A's teams able to win with all of that going on, he made George Steinbrenner look like a choir boy. Now, nobody's talking to Jets. You are. That's a good point, Kenny. Billy's getting the MVP for the Jets this year, just for still rooting for them. Snow is coming. We haven't had a very mild winter. I mean, what is it? 21st? 22nd of January, we've only had, I'm probably going to jinx ourselves. We haven't even had 10 inches of snow. I don't know if we've had 8 inches of snow. At least not here. Some areas have had a little more than that. They think Steinbrenner was weird. Finley was the best. Finley was a nut job for all the reasons I just said and more. Read some stuff on Charlie Finley, and he's not a good person. Just not a good person. Now, he did bring the A's to Oakland, and theoretically, he built a World Series champion because he really didn't have a GM. He was the GM. So I'll give him credit for that. But, some of the stuff he tried to pull, the Mikey Andrews stuff, and the free agency just ate him up because he knew he couldn't compete. He wasn't in a market where he was drawing. Tried to move the team in the 70s to Denver, Toronto. And then he ended up selling the team. And that was that. So anyway, Sal Bando, rest in peace. You are certainly going to be remembered. What else we got here? So let's talk a little upset. We had a trade yesterday. As I get ready to butcher his name. Luis, I played the pronunciation earlier and I cannot remember what it said. Luis Arraez. Luis Arraez. You guys can butcher me all you want. I don't care. Infielder for the Twins, infielder DH. He won the American League batting crown last year. Was traded to the Marlins for right-hand pitcher Pablo Lopez, who the Yankees were chasing very fervently last year during the trading deadline. Again, in the offseason. He probably gives the Minnesota a piece to their rotation that they didn't have. Right now, they've got a bunch of retreads, and Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, Tyler Mahle, and Kenta Medea, who's returning from an injury. They've got Chris Paddock, who they signed, but I believe he's going to miss this entire season. He brings a nice piece to this Twins rotation, and their offense. They've got a bunch of players who play the game like Arraez plays, and I think they'll be okay. And I think this is a good trade for the Twins. It's probably a good trade for the Marlins, but I think if they held out, maybe traded him at the deadline again, or looked to trade him again this year at the deadline, like they were looking to last year, they might have done better than what they did here, depending on how he got off to the season, how his season got off to a start. So we'll see. And by the way, I said Chris Paddock is out for the year. They do have some hope that he can come back at some point during the season. I think the reports, in fact, I think somebody told me on this show last week that he was going to miss the entire season. I have seen reports that they do hope that he may come back as early as late in the first half. So we'll see how that goes going forward. What do you got here? Baseball, bring back the beer and peanuts, guys. You know what? Good point. That's a great point. It is so funny and weird now to go to a game, and I think it was pretty much COVID was the end of it. Yankee Stadium, at least, has no beer vendors, no peanut vendors. You're going up and getting whatever you want. And I don't know if every stadium's like that, but it's weird to sit in the stands and not hear those guys, for me. Yeah, I would kind of agree with you, Drew. I think that the Marlins, as I said, could have done much better here. Not that he's not a nice player, and he'll fit on this team because he can play around. I think he can play around the infield a little bit. He can DH, but I'm not sure that Arraez. How did I say? I didn't go too far off of that. Arraez. You live with a Spanish teacher, Drew. It's not cool. I mean, you know how to pronounce these names just through osmosis. Me, I need more Smith and Jones. Plus, it becomes part of who I am. I love. Oh, what do you got here? TGI, the agony of speech and the thrill of laughter. Oh, thank you. Arraez is just a singles hitter. But listen, he did lead the league in hitting. You do need guys who, hit 300 and have decent on-base percentages. I'm not trying to stick up for this guy. I think he is a guy who can play an important part on a winning team. But you're right. The Marlins aren't going to be a winning team, so his value is going to be minimal there. Well, I like Jazz Chisholm, killed my fantasy team last year by not playing much of the year. Tim Ott was watching today. Great to have Tim with us today. He may be the only one that can help us, as he was a teacher and a principal. Well, he brings up the overall level of our intelligence quota, also known as IQ. I wanted to show you that I knew what it meant. So, Tim, if you're still with us, thanks for showing up and raising the overall IQ of the show. So thank you very much for that. Billy's been on 4 different stadiums, East Coast, West Coast in 2022, all beers. Yeah, so it's every stadium. You know what'll happen? Somebody's going to do it, and then maybe it'll cycle back. I don't know, because again, I don't have to pay these guys. So how many guys are out of business? How many guys are out of a job because we had the convenient excuse of COVID to eliminate their positions? And again, I'm sure they weren't high-paid guys, but they made money on tips. They made money on a lot of stuff. These guys, probably some of these guys probably made a decent buck. It's pretty sad. Drew will take the 9 base hitters over. You know what? I don't disagree, Kenny. And again, I talk about this all the time with the Yankees and how they're constructed. We need guys that can get on base. That's why I'm excited about Bader. And I wish Benintendi was coming back, because then you've got some guys to get on base for your home run hitters. I don't want 9 guys that can do that, Kenny. You do need some power in your lineup, but I understand your point. Problem is, with a team like the Marlins, they likely they aren't that close to contending it. I think Reyes would be much better on a team ready to contend than he would be on the Marlins. I think he's a nice player. Tim Ott, a good man. How do you know all these Perth guys, Bill? Jeez. Not unheard of to have a hitter that does both. True. Very true. Unfortunately, there's more Joey Gallos now than there are Ken Griffey Juniors. I guess, to use an example. I'm trying to think of an example of a guy today. I mean, I wouldn't call Aaron Judge just a home run hitter. So, although he does strike out too much. Be careful. There are a few people with monsters and other college degrees, with masters, and no, there are. I know that. I'm just kidding. I'm only talking about those of us that are on the show today from Perth. And Kenny, if you've got a master's that I'm not aware of, I apologize. It ain't me. So, oh my gosh. What else is going on in Major League Baseball news? Let me take a quick look, and then I want to go around and I think I want to go take a quick team by team look. A couple other news pieces. We talked about Bando. Braves. The Braves are committing to Grissom at shortstop this year, which is a big move for them. They lost Dansby Swanson in free agency. They weren't able to bring in one of the other guys. They're bringing in their number one prospect in Vaughn Grissom, to move to shortstop, and he's getting some extra work now. It could be a tough transition. The kid can hit a little bit. He did play 39 games at second base, filling in when Albies was hurt last year, and played only 1 game at shortstop. But he's got a big bit. Listen, they talk about him having a big build, 6'3", 210. I mean, Derek Jeter was 6'3". Cal Ripken was 6'4", maybe taller. So it doesn't mean you can't play shortstop. What's a kid from the White Sox is about 6'8" or some freaking thing. And he did hit 271 with 8 homers and 32 RBIs. So that's a possibility that'll work out. But they got a big hole there they got to fill. That's for sure. What did I do here? I lost all my comments. Hold on. There we go. Kevin Pillar will join the Braves on a minor league deal. Nice veteran outfielder. You know, he's not going to play every day. I think the last time, I'm not sure if he played much last year. I think he was trying to see. I don't know if he played in the major leagues at all last year. No, he spent time in AAA with Oklahoma City. Last time he played regularly was with the Mets in 2021. Not regularly, but he played 124 games and hit 15 homers with 47 RBIs. He didn't hit for much average, but he's a serviceable fourth, fifth outfielder. He's certainly not going to play regularly in that outfield with Michael Harris and Acuna out there. Well, I don't know. Maybe, Marcell Ozuna, who knows what his status is going to be. Eddie Rosario are coming up. They're both coming off disappointing seasons, and Ozuna had issues off the field. But I don't think Pillar is a guy that's going to be a difference maker there. I think it's funny. Andrew McCutcheon was talking about his return to Pittsburgh, and he said, "I want to win here." Well, you're too old. They're not going to win for 10 years, this team. I mean, what is there a more backwards team in baseball than the Pittsburgh Pirates? Have we seen some of the signings they've had this year? I'll get into it when I go through the thing. Rich Hill, McCutcheon. I'm trying to think of some of the other guys off the top of my head. Rich Hill. Kenny, you could go out there and throw the ball as well as Rich Hill. Oh, God. Just don't get it. Mike Trout says his back injury has been a non-issue for months. Talked about that. Yankees named Shelby Duncan, by the way, Dave Duncan's son, who played with the Yankees and a few other teams in his major league career. Signed him to be their AAA manager at Scranton Wilkes-Barre. So, interesting note there. You have an associate. Well, but Paul is not a Perth graduate, I don't believe, unless I'm wrong. And, I mean, she probably raises your overall IQ just by living with her, Kenny. I get that. But anyway, I'm not disparaging anybody, so I'm kidding. And most of that is geared at me, by the way. Don't take it so seriously. I promise you, I'm kidding around. Braves lead the major league in signing youngins to long-term contracts. Agreed. A lot, and that's been a trend. Well, before this year, and all these, I guess the young guys at team-friendly contracts long-term. Tatis, Ozuna, I think. That's a smart way to go. But the problem is, Drew, they give these guys outs, right? So as soon as your contract's obsolete, you're looking for a new one. Hate that. Pillar takes a beaning and keeps you. That's a good point. I know you're joking, Kenny. I'm only kidding. I'm kidding. I'm always kidding. Except when I'm not. You can tell when I'm serious because my head usually gets really red and looks like it starts to pulsate. Right about here, there's a vein, and you'll think my head is about to explode. All right, let's take a quick look. I want to take a quick look at some teams as we head into spring training. Oh, I want to look at the Hall of Fame. Why don't we do that first? Let's do that, Drew. I don't want to miss out on this because I'm not sure when the voting is. Voting's coming up very soon. I want to look at the ballot. I don't think Billy Wagner deserves to be in. I'm not sure why you do. You can certainly give me your views here. And could be something that we chat about. I don't think he's getting in. When is the vote? January 24th. So it's going to be this week. So I'm glad I do want to get onto this. And if we don't get onto my spring training kind of preview, we got another few weeks to do that. We got new people coming to the ballot this year, debuting on the ballot this year. And I'm going to tell you what I think they deserve even consideration. Because, by the way, this Hall of Fame has become the Hall of Very Good, not the Hall of Fame. Fred McGriff, Gil Hodges, great players. Love Gil Hodges. Sorry, I don't think you're a Hall of Famer. And I can name a bunch more. It's okay not to have guys get in. I saw a ballot the other day that had Mark Burley on it. You can't vote for Mark Burley for the Hall of Fame. You're liable to see that vein during this conversation. Mark Burley. Just because you have 10 spots on your ballot doesn't mean you got to fill them all in. You can turn it in blank. This isn't the NFL. For whatever reason, they've got to induct, between 5 and 100 guys every year, whatever the freaking number is. Can't have 0. It's annoying. Here's the guys who are new. Bronson Arroyo? No. Carlos Beltran? Probably not. Matt Cain? No way. R.A. Dickey? No way. Jacoby Ellsbury? No way, unless you want to get a Hall of Fame for bad contracts. Andre Ethier? J.J. Hardy? John Lackey? Mike Napoli? Johnny Peralta? Francisco Rodriguez? Houston Street? Jared Weaver? Jason Worth? Not one guy that deserves a vote for the Hall of Fame. If you feel the need to vote for somebody, vote for Carlos Beltran, I guess. Not one guy deserves a vote for the Hall of Fame in that whole group. Not one. Now, let me give you the guys that are returning and their vote totals from last year. And I believe they're only on the ballot. What are they on the ballot? 10 times? Oh, gosh. Rollins doesn't say here, but I think he after 10, Drew, you can probably correct me. I think it's 10 times you get. Billy Wagner's on the ballot for the 8th time, by the way, this year. Got 51% last year. Highest vote getter returning is Scott Rowland. Now, Scott Rowland was a better defensive player than he was an offensive player, and I'm not saying that's a reason to be excluded. But I'd more likely to vote for Andrew Jones, who got 41% last year in his 6th year. They're both in their 6th year on the ballot. Andrew Jones was the best center fielder, and I think he won 10 straight Gold Gloves and hit 30 home runs during that 10-year stretch. I would vote for Andrew Jones for the Hall of Fame, most likely. And he's borderline. Scott Rowland, borderline. Jeff Kent, nice player, best second baseman during the time that he played. So, again, were you the best at your position even during the time you played? Scott Rowland was in the top 5 of guys. Andrew Jones was the top player at his position for 10 years. I can give him a benefit of doubt. Jeff Kent, probably not. He got 32%. He's in his 10th year, and it's his last year, if I'm right about the years. Andy Pettitte, 5th year, 10%. Andy Pettitte doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. He was never even the best pitcher on his own team. Now, the wins, obviously, I can't look at 300 wins anymore. Nobody's ever going to win 300 wins, get 300 wins a game again. Andy had what, 220 some? I don't have the numbers right in front of me. Never the best pitcher on his own team. It's a little of the Don Sutton syndrome. Don Sutton's in the Hall of Fame because he pitched like for 24 years and won over 300 games, but he was never even the best pitcher on his own team. Now that's great, if Sandy Koufax is your guy. Mark Burley, please stop. Why has somebody got Burley on their ballot? Todd Helton got 52% last year. He's in his 5th year. Gary Sheffield. These are two intriguing candidates, right? Todd Helton had a high peak, but it wasn't long. And he also played half his games in Coors Field, which is going to hurt him. I don't think Todd Helton ever gets in the Hall of Fame. Gary Sheffield. Gary Sanchez. That's very funny. Like he's ever going to get the Hall of Fame. Gary Sheffield, Ninth year, 40%. I don't think he's ever getting there. Manny Ramirez, 6th year. He's tainted by the whole steroid thing. Now, again, I say put him in, put the steroid guys in, and give them tell the story, warts and all on my plaque. Cheated the game. Manny might get my vote. Jimmy Rollins, no. Torrey Hunter, no. Billy Wagner, I don't know, Drew. I got to look at his numbers, I guess. I'll look at him after this. A-Rod, again, I guess if I'm going to go by my own statement I just made, then A-Rod's got to be in the Hall of Fame. Omar Vizquel, probably not. Bobby Abreu, probably not. Now we'll take a look at Billy Wagner's numbers here. Still not sure about rolling. I want to look at Billy Wagner's numbers. I'll get to the rest of your comments here in a second. I want to pull up Billy Wagner's numbers real quick. What time we got? We're doing good. Billy Wagner. Oh, Billy Wagner. Don't you love the baseball reference? It's the best thing ever put together. Billy Wagner. Career saves, 422. 30, 39, 39, 35, 44. Oh, pretty good years. Where did he finish in? MVP, Cy Young, 4th. Twice only in the Cy Young. MVP, 1 year in the top 16. All-Star, 7 times. Boy, I just don't know, Drew, because, relief pitchers sometimes the numbers are a little screwy to me. And I'm on the fence about Wagner. I really am. I'm hoping when the shortage of snow comes in June, July, and August, especially October. I'm with you, Kenny, by the way. Charlie Hustle belongs in the Hall of Fame. You can't have a Hall of Fame without Pete Rose. He can't get voted in until he's taken off the ineligible list. So the Veterans Committee or whatever the heck, I don't know what they're calling it now. They changed the name of it, but it's basically the Veterans Committee. So guys that have fallen off the regular ballot, they can vote on. They voted in McGriff this year, Gil Hodges last year, Ted Simmons last year. I think Ted Simmons last year. But you can't have a Hall of Fame without Pete Rose, and you put in there again. You put him in. Pete Rose is all the fallacy. The whole thing is Pete Rose is all over the Hall of Fame. Go to the museum. There's balls and bats. You put it in there, and you say Pete Rose bet on baseball was banned for life. Pete Rose and Joe Jackson belong in the Hall of Fame as much as the steroid guys do. I did a whole vlog on this a year ago. Maybe I'll post it. You're going to put Big Papi in the Hall of Fame. How do you not put the other steroid guys in? Oh, we didn't do steroids. I forgot. Oh, sorry. Wagner, 422 saves, 2.3. That's not his ERA. Is that his ERA? 2.73. Hold on. That's not the right thing. Where's his ERA? Now, one thing they can stop doing, Drew, is give me all these freaking. Here it is over here. 2.31. Okay. 853 games. Maybe it's because I never liked the guy. Highest K rate, 7-time All-Star, third most 30 save seasons. You missed a 0 there, maybe. Because if he had the third most 3 save seasons, I don't think we'd be talking about him. Is he better than Lee? Now, here's the thing. The better than guys that are already in there doesn't work with me because I've already said we put guys in that shouldn't be in there. Right? I've always said if Kirby Puckett's in a Hall of Fame, Don Mattingly has to be in a Hall of Fame. If Scott Rowland gets in a Hall of Fame, Greg Nettles should be in a Hall of Fame. I think they're very similar players. So I can't use that argument. I don't think he was better than Raleigh Fingers, by the way. They use relievers, and you can't. Raleigh Fingers was used differently than relievers are used in, and that's why it's so hard to compare. Even Bruce Sutter, Lee Smith, not to this, even Lee Smith to a certain extent, they weren't used like relievers are used today, or in Billy Wagner's era. I mean, I gotta believe Billy was 96. Yeah, Billy was already in here during the I'm only coming in a save situation, and I'm not coming in until the ninth inning with nobody on base. That's why I can't compare relievers like Gossage and Fingers and Sutter, maybe Lee Smith a little bit. I can't compare them. They're different pitchers. The position's so much different than it was years ago. Fingers definitely belongs in the Hall of Fame. Lee Smith, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there. But I don't like the argument. So if so-and-so's in, I got to put this guy in. That's how we end up with a Hall of Very Good. You know? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I knew you meant 30 seasons. I know you meant 30. And a lefty to boot. Listen, his numbers are really good, and maybe I'll reconsider that. But I got to vote for the steroid guys. I mean, where do you stand there? I'm going to put in these relief pitchers who, by the way, I mean, the numbers look great, but again, the numbers are a little bit skewed because most of these guys don't come in, because they won't come in with men on base like again, as I said, Gossage and Fingers and all these guys did in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s. They come in with bases loaded. They come in with nobody out in the seventh inning and pitch 3 innings. Sparky Lyle would pitch 5 innings. But you're gonna discount the guys who really had impact on the game. Some like Manny Ramirez, A-Rod. Again, I hate A-Rod. And Pete Rose. Well, and he's been his own worst enemy. Pete Rose would be in a Hall of Fame today if he just come clean. Without any caveats. It's frustrating as hell. So Wagner's a good pitcher. I mean, I just can't use the argument that if so-and-so is in, so does he have to be. They're totally different. I mean, especially the guys I mentioned. They're not even, we're barely comparing even the same positions, I think, Drew, in my mind. I mean, it becomes hard anyway to compare eras in general because of the way baseball's played today as compared to the way it was played, just 30 years ago, much less 50 or 60. Holy shit, 60 years ago is only 1960. Oh, my God. Isn't being in a Hall of Fame supposed to be what you did as that was almost impossible for most players? I don't know about it, almost impossible, but you need to have stood out amongst your peers. Yeah, you should be head and shoulders above everybody else. Pete Rose did things that nobody else could do, right? Or did, I shouldn't say. Pete Rose has the most hits in history. And nobody's ever going to touch it, by the way. Ever. But he bet on baseball, so he's not there. His biggest issue is, now he's come out and admitted he gambled, and he even admitted he bet on the Reds. But he said he never bet on the Reds to lose, which to me doesn't, I agree with him. Literally, he never bet on the Reds to lose. But when you think about the fact that every time he didn't bet on the Reds, he thought they were going to lose, which sent a signal to other bettors. Keyword is dominant. I would agree with that. The keyword is dominant. But again, Raleigh Fingers was dominant. And Raleigh Fingers wasn't asked to just come in with nobody on base in the ninth inning and pitch to 3 guys. Plus, the save rules were a whole lot different back then, too. Billy Wagner was dominant. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I don't like the argument comparing him to the other guys because I don't think there is a comparison. But I'll give you Billy Wagner in the Hall of Fame. Scott Rowland, I'm not so sure about. Let's look up Scott Rowland. Let's look at Scott Rowland's candidacy, because to me these are the two guys that are, I think, stand the best chance of getting elected this year. I would say. Where are you, Mr. Rowland? I'm going to tell you again that if he's in the Hall of Fame, Greg Nettles needs to be in the Hall of Fame like very soon afterwards. He had a better batting average. I think they were comparable fielders, by the way. How many Gold Gloves did he have? Gold Glove, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Gold Gloves. Nettles probably didn't have as many, but Nettles also played against Brooks Robinson as he was wrapping up his career. There were some other really good defensive third basemen. There's nobody I would take over Greg Nettles. Offensively, they're very I think they compare very favorably, except maybe for batting average. Probably got him. Again, my argument is, how are you leaving some of these guys out? How is Don Mattingly not in the Hall of Fame if you're putting Kirby Puckett in? Just tell me that. Give me that explanation. Oh, I guess I went backwards here. Sorry. Where's Drew's comment? Dominant. We got. See, I'm not getting into these. I will not get into these plus 180s. I don't give a crap about that stuff for Drew. I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't mean to be harsh here, but let's just talk, because I don't really don't care what these sabermetric guys think today, that I need to worry about WAR and I need to worry about plus ERAs and ballpark, this, that, and the other thing, and line drive percentage and blah, blah, blah. But I can't look at wins. I can't look at ERA. I can't look at home runs, RBIs, and batting average. I can't look at any of that anymore. None of that means anything. So I'm not getting into conversations about plus ERAs. I don't care. Sorry. That'll be my answer forever. I know what it means. I don't need those stats, though. First of all, I got an eye test. I have an eye test. The numbers don't tell the entire story, right? You look at Greg Nettles and you'll say, well, he only won 2 Gold Gloves, 3 Gold Gloves, whatever it was. But I watched him play day in and day out. I watched him single-handedly save Game 5 of the 1978 World Series when Ron Guidry was getting knocked all over the ballpark. I know what kind of player Greg Nettles was by watching him, not looking at numbers that I can manipulate any way I want. Now, with that said, you've won your argument with Wagner. I'm just not looking at those numbers. To me, they're, when did we just start to decide who gets in a Hall of Fame based on frickin' algebra and trigonometry, for crying out loud? Now, I know these aren't algebra and trigonometry things before you throw that at me. I'm just saying. Baseball. God. Oh, Kenny's dollar point. Imagine Cooperstown with no one inducted. There has been several years recently. I want to say just a couple of years ago, we had somebody's going to get this before I do, I'm sure. I'm going to say there have been at least a half dozen years with nobody inducted. 2021, nobody. Boy, is that the only year? That can't be the only year. It's the only recent year. A lot of years with one guy. Your points, I get your point, Rick, for sure. 65, none. 2 years. 60, none. 58, none. 51, none. Now, I know, the money wasn't as prevalent back during these times, but as I said, 43, none. 41, none. 40, none. It's almost 10 seasons, almost 10 years with no inductees. Now, only one in the last 20 or more, but it does happen. And it's okay. The NFL can do whatever they want. They got to have their big splash, and they got to have 5 or 100 guys get inducted just to get them in. That's why the NFL Hall of Fame is full of guys that don't belong there. Also, second to Mo and lowest. See, and you can give me live ball era stuff. I'll buy that stuff. No, you've won me over here, Drew. Your argument is very compelling for Billy Wagner. I think I got a feeling. He wasn't one of my favorite guys. I don't know why. When he pitched with the Astros, and then with the year with the Mets, I think only 1 year with the Mets, right? I don't know. I just didn't like the guy, and that's probably, again, that's my fault. I shouldn't really let that play into my decision making here. I run out of time. We'll try to get the rest of these comments. Today's players wouldn't be as prevalent in yesteryear's baseball. Some would. Don't say everyone. I don't think that's necessarily true. There are certainly guys that could play, in the 70s. The pitchers would not be taught to pitch the same way, right? They would have to go out and pitch 9 innings more often than not. But I think there are guys that could certainly play in different areas, just like there's guys back in that area that could play today. I don't push it on that 50% would even make it in baseball. Well, that's different than nobody. 50%, you may be right. Todd Heltner, 42%, 52. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, 52% in your first ballot is one of those benchmarks where you almost always get inducted. I'm not sure. There's different things, right? Like, nobody who ever reached this number didn't eventually get elected. Roland might be at that number. So I don't think Helton's a Hall of Famer. It is and because his numbers are greatly enhanced by Coors Field, just like Larry Walker's were. But I think Larry Walker's more deserving than Helton. Some of these major leaguers couldn't have played in the professional women's baseball league. Well, now you're getting a little bit crazy. I'm in the baseball half. Check the handrail, wrote my name on it. What? I'm in the baseball. Oh, really? I'll be up there. I haven't been up there in a few years, and I want to get up there this spring. I'm not driving to Cooperstown to spend my hard-earned money to see a sports writer inducted. Who is getting in this year? Well, there's going to be a sports writer inducted, because I think, well, not every year, obviously, but I think somebody is getting in this year in the Spinks Award, I think. No, I'm sorry, it's not. Just Fred McGriff. That's it. Guess I was thinking of not even last year. So anyway, I should go back. If I had some more time, and I do have some time, I'm going to go over a little bit. I'm going to go through these lists. Let me get Drew's comment here. I'm going to stick around a little past. Yeah, I just don't care about Roku today. We're going to go a little over. Lise Walker played in Montreal before his Coors bump. But, I agree. But his numbers weren't, if he played his entire career in Montreal, would he have been a Hall of Famer? Well, he couldn't have, because Montreal wasn't around for his entire career. I'm going to go through the last few years and give you some. Fred McGriff, voted in by the, Veterans Committee, or whatever we're calling it today. No, I don't think he ought to be in. Bud Fowler, I can't tell you enough about. I'm going to say Gil Hodges. No, I'm sorry, Met fans, Dodger fans. Jim Cott, I love Jim Cott. No. Minnie Minosa, no. Played in 5 different decades as a PR stunt. Tony Oliva, great player, man. Your career cut short by injuries. I'm more likely to give Oliva the benefit of doubt than some of these other guys. But tell me how he's in and not Don Mattingly, who also had his career cut short by injuries. Again, these are veteran. Some of these are veteran guys. David Ortiz, I believe, was the only one voted in on a fan vote in 2022. And I say no. I'll say yes, but with the steroid. Buck O'Neil, yeah. 2021, none. 2020, Derek Jeter, absolutely. Marvin Miller, absolutely. Ted Simmons, again, you want to go, I'm going to say no. And again, if you want somebody, if Thurman Munson's not in, how's Ted Simmons in? Larry Walker, borderline. 2019, Harold Baines, come on. Roy Halladay, I'll give you Roy Halladay. Because again, you can't look at just the numbers anymore. Edgar Martinez, I'm going to say yes. Mike Bucina, he falls into the Don Sutton argument. 120 games once his last year. Never the best pitcher on his own team. Maybe with the Orioles. Kind of, I mean, if he's in, shouldn't Pettit be in? Mariano Rivera, no-brainer. Lee Smith, again, as Drew said, I kind of waver on that one. 2018, Chipper Jones, absolutely. Vlad Guerrero, absolutely. Jim Tomei, okay. Trevor Hoffman, okay. Again, Trevor Hoffman probably is a better comparison for me with Wagner than Fingers and Sutter and anybody else past that time. Jack Morris, I'm not even sure about Jack Morris. He compiled numbers. He never was. He had a few really good years. He pitched a long time. Alan Trammell, because of position, I'll say okay. Jeff Bagwell, yes. Probably with steroid asterisks. Tim Raines, all right. Irod, yes. John Sherholtz, yes. Bud Selig, no. Mike Piazza, yes. Ken Griffey Jr., absolutely. Craig Biggio, maybe. Second baseman, numbers good. Second base-wise, okay. Randy Johnson, yes. Pedro, yes. John Smoltz, I'm going to say yes because the guy, like Dennis Eckersley, had this mid-career transition from starter to reliever and was one of the best of both. Bobby Cox, yes. Tom Glavine, yes. Greg Maddux, yes. La Russa, yes. Frank Thomas, yes. Joe Torre, yes. Player/manager. Hank O'Day, I don't know enough about. Jacob Rubert, sure. Dinkin White, don't know enough about. Barry Larkin, I don't know. Position again, I guess if I say Trammell belongs in, Larkin does. Ron Santo, yeah. But again, if I say yes to Ron Santo, I probably got to say yes to Scott Rowland, right? But again, if those two guys are in, why isn't Greg Nettles in? Roberto Alomar, yes. Burt Blyleven, love Burt Blyleven. I'm trying so hard to get an interview with Burt Blyleven. I just don't know. I mean, he got his numbers over a long period of time. Now, I believe he might be second in the strikeout category all time, too. Pat Gillick, yes. I'm only going to go back a few more years here. Andre Dawson, yes. Doug Harvey, yes. Whitey Herzog, yes. Ricky Henderson, Jim Rice, yes, yes, yes. Joe Gordon, yes. Tony Gwynn, Cal Ripken, yes. Bowie Kuhn, Goose Gossage, Walter O'Malley, yes. Dick Williams, yes. That's enough. Wade Boggs, Ryan Sandberg, yes and yes. Dennis Eckersley, Paul Molitor, yes and yes. Dennis said that. Eddie Murray, Gary Carter, yes and yes. I'll do 2 more years, get to 2000. Ozzie Smith, yes. Dave Winslow, yes. Kirby Puckett, got to put Don Mattingly in. Bill Mazeroski, that's always a hot topic, right? I'm going to lean towards no. Fisk, yes. Perez, okay. Sparky, yes. That's about all I got. I'm not going to go any further. Any comments on any of that? You can throw them in here real quick, and then we'll finish up. Had to pause too much. Got behind with the Hall of Fame, tech support evolution. I'm probably best. I don't have time for all these those tall weeds. I think if you're talking about the players being better today because of technology, I don't know that they're better. I think sometimes there's paralysis by analysis, and I think there's too much data available for these guys in a lot of cases. Because it can't. How come the mail guy's coming up my driveway today? Technology can't overcome hard work, perseverance, right? Anyway, guys, it's been a great show today. I've had a lot of fun. We talked about a lot of topics. We kind of stuck in. We'll probably do more of this, sticking to baseball and football. I didn't get into my. Kenny, you're going to be so. Kenny, are you still with me? Give me a heads up. If you are, I want to show you something. If not, I'll save it for next week. Give me a quick heads up. I'll give some thank yous right now to Kenny and Rick and CA and Drew, Billy, Alan, Anthony, all for getting in and participating today. I did find an interesting sport, Kenny, to kind of take a look at, and it is very bizarre, and it's painful to watch. But I want to show it, and if you are not here, I will wait till next week to show this clip, and we can talk about it a little bit then. So if you're not here, don't worry about it. I had to note my odd sports segment. I don't think Kenny's still with me, so we'll wait on this. It's I'm gonna save the surprise for next week, and we'll start maybe trying to highlight an odd sport every week to make Kenny's day. And I found a few to kind of look at. We did find tackle basketball, Rick. That's not the one I was going to highlight today. We'll certainly talk about that one. I want to get into some old Wide World of Sports, odd sports. They had a ton of them. I loved that show when I was a kid. And I think I'm going to start doing some little one-off things maybe when I have some time, just watching an old Wide World of Sports episode and doing some commentary on it while it's going on. And until at least they catch me and say I'm violating all kinds of copyrights. So in any event, guys, great show today. CA, if I didn't mention you're great. Thanks for coming in. I love the interaction we have. I know that. That's just Wednesday on the college football huddle, college basketball huddle, I should say, college sports huddle. We'll be back with Are You Serious on Friday. Make sure you check out the content we have on Northeast Streaming Sports and Let's Talk Sports. I do a Major League Baseball update every day on Let's Talk, or every week on Let's Talk Sports. So, Drew, check that out. I'm looking for a time to go have it live. I was doing it recorded, and I want to do it live. I've been doing it Friday afternoons, but I want to get more participation. And my weekly blog, of course, and also this Sunday stream of gospel. So, great to have you with us, guys. We'll talk some more. See you later, Drew. Have a great Sunday. Go Bengals. Go 49. Yeah, great call there, by the way. We'll talk more about that. Biggio is a good player. I probably downgraded him.